Oh my god.
No, Kodak, you not Kodak. Oh my Kodak.
It was supposed to be a quick food pickup for Kodak Black, nothing more than a routine stop. But the situation shifted the second the cashier pulled out a phone. Within minutes, according to reports from inside that building, gunshots erupted inside the restaurant, forcing Kodak to run for his life. The footage that followed left people asking one direct question. Did he actually make it out alive? That moment did not begin with violence. It began with something much smaller. Recognition. Before getting into the chaos that unfolded inside that Pizza Hut on the night of February 15, 2026, there is something that needs to be understood clearly. The world Kodak Black operates in is not the same world most people move through casually. For the average person, walking into a restaurant is simple. You think about food. You think about what you are about to order. Maybe you consider extra cheese. Maybe you debate whether the garlic knots justify the extra cost. Maybe you tell yourself you will save half for later even though you know you will not. But when you are a rapper with a public history, legal baggage, street affiliations, and a reputation that has followed you for years, walking into any public space is never casual. It is a calculated decision. It is risk assessment every time. Kodak Black has been living with that reality for the better part of a decade. Attention follows him. Cameras follow him.
Oh my god.
No, Kodak, you not Kodak. Oh my Kodak.
And sometimes, so do problems. On that particular evening, Kodak Black, whose real name is Bill Kahan Capri, walked into a Pizza Hut for what appeared to be a simple pickup. He was not alone. Standing beside him was Miranda Johnson, the mother of two of his children. They walked in without drama. No entourage, no loud entrance. Just two people collecting food late at night. The setting looked ordinary. Dim lights, sparse customers, quiet environment. Nothing in that moment suggested escalation. Kodak was dressed casually, cap on, relaxed posture, no visible tension. From the outside, it looked like a normal scene. But that sense of normalcy lasted seconds. The moment the cashier looked up and realized who was standing across the counter, the atmosphere shifted instantly. The energy in that restaurant changed in a way that could be felt before it was fully understood. Oh my God. That reaction was not subtle. It was immediate and uncontrolled. The cashier, who was supposed to be doing one job, taking payment and handing over food, pulled out a phone almost instinctively. Recording began before thought caught up. Excitement replaced professionalism. The interaction stopped being transactional and became personal. In one heartbeat, the dynamic changed. Employee to fan, service to spectacle. This is where the situation tightened. Kodak Black did not smile. He did not pose. He did not step into the moment the way some celebrities do when they are recognized. There was no playful reaction, no wave to the camera. Instead, there was visible restraint.
Kodak, bro. Kodak, I love you, bro. Look, nah, for real.
A controlled expression. Awareness. Because in his world, a phone recording is not always harmless. A simple video can attract attention far beyond that restaurant. It can alert people who were not there. It can turn a quiet pickup into something else entirely. And that is exactly where this story begins to turn. Instead, he subtly backed away. It was not dramatic. It was controlled. He shifted his body toward the exit as if the decision had already been made internally. The order no longer mattered. The food could sit on that counter untouched. Kodak Black was not going to remain in a public space while someone recorded his face without permission. Not in a restaurant. Not in a city where anybody could be watching. Not in an era where a single clip can travel faster than common sense.
Bro, I'm gonna serve you food. I'll serve you food, please.
From his perspective, the safest option was simple. Leave. Some people watching later might think it was an overreaction. Just a phone. Just a fan excited to see a celebrity. Nothing more than a moment of enthusiasm. But that interpretation ignores context. It ignores recent history. And it ignores what has happened before in similar situations. Anyone who remembers what happened to PNB Rock understands that restaurants are no longer neutral spaces for certain artists. A location shared at the wrong time can become a signal flare. So when Kodak Black saw that camera raised in a closed environment, he was not thinking about publicity. He was not thinking about trending topics. He was thinking about exposure. He was thinking about how quickly a live recording can alert the wrong people. Survival logic moves differently. It does not wait for confirmation. Social media reacted instantly once the footage surfaced. Comments flooded in, pointing out how similar scenarios had played out in the past. This, how they got PNB rock. That sentiment repeated itself across timelines. Others observed that Yak was not about to gamble with his safety for a moment of online attention. They were referencing a documented reality. Broadcasting someone's real-time location without consent carries risk, especially for someone with enemies, legal history, and public notoriety. But just as Kodak was about to step through that door and disappear into the Florida night, something shifted again. The cashier's voice broke through the tension. Kodak, no. It was not aggressive. It was panic. The tone revealed immediate regret. In that instant, the cashier realized the mistake. Excitement had replaced judgment. Professional boundaries had been crossed, and the consequence was unfolding in real time as the person they admired most prepared to walk out. "Bro, I'm gonna serve you food." The plea sounded almost childlike, desperate, not manipulative, but afraid of losing the moment entirely. That hesitation from Kodak lasted only seconds, but it carried weight. He paused, turned, measured the situation. Then he walked back toward the counter, pointed at the menu to confirm the order, and allowed the interaction to resume. What had nearly escalated into another example of how quickly fame can turn volatile de-escalated just as fast. The exchange ended calmly. A fist bump. Photos with staff. Smiles for the camera that moments earlier he wanted nothing to do with. On the surface, it concluded as a harmless celebrity encounter. But beneath it, one question lingered. Was the cashier wrong for reacting like a fan in that moment? Or was Kodak operating under a level of caution most people cannot relate to? The answer is layered. It cannot be understood without going backward. To understand why that phone triggered a survival response, you have to go back to Pompano Beach, back to the housing projects, back to the first time a young boy named Duson Octave understood that safety was not guaranteed. The world he grew up in did not reward relaxation. It demanded alertness. It demanded anticipation. It demanded reading rooms before rooms read you. When you examine that background closely, the Pizza Hut moment stops looking dramatic. It starts looking consistent. For someone raised in instability, where conflict and unpredictability were normal, a phone raised in a public place can represent more than fandom. It can represent vulnerability. Kodak Black was not born into comfort. He was not born into security. Stability was not the foundation of his upbringing. There were no controlled environments where he could exist without calculating risk. That kind of upbringing shapes reactions. It shapes posture. It shapes instinct. And it explains why a simple recording device, in the wrong setting, can feel less like a camera and more like exposure waiting to happen. Kodak Black, born Duson Octave on June 11, 1997, in Pompano Beach, Florida, entered the world without privilege, without insulation, and without the kind of stability that shields a child from the harsher edges of reality. He grew up in the Golden Acres public housing project, raised by a single Haitian immigrant mother who carried the weight of survival on her own shoulders. His father was absent. The household was held together by resilience, not resources. Golden Acres was not an environment built on opportunity. It was built on endurance. Poverty was not temporary. It was structural. The neighborhood was rough. The choices available were narrow. And the path forward, for many young boys growing up there, was presented in the simplest and most unforgiving terms imaginable. There was no safety net waiting underneath. No backup plan quietly prepared in case things went wrong. There was only the street economy and whatever a young mind could piece together to navigate it. Kodak would later reflect on those early years with clarity. He described being presented with two doors: sell drugs with a gun on his hip, or rap. That was the framework placed in front of a child who had not even finished elementary school. Two options. Neither guaranteed safety. One simply offered a different kind of risk. School did not provide refuge. In the 5th grade, he was expelled for fighting. By middle school, he had already been arrested for auto theft. While most children were concerned about homework assignments and playground disputes, he was already interacting with a justice system that did not operate with patience or nuance. For a young black boy in South Florida, the system was not structured to rehabilitate. It was structured to process. And once you enter that cycle early, it becomes increasingly difficult to step outside of it. Yet even as the streets pulled at him from every direction, music began to anchor him. The temptation of fast money and immediate validation was constant. But something about rhythm and language offered an alternative outlet. He found meaning in writing, in transforming frustration into verses, in turning instability into structured sound. That discipline became its own form of survival. By the age of 6, he had adopted the nickname Black. By 12, he was involved in local rap collectives like Brutal Youngs and the Colians. His classrooms were not traditional. They were trap houses, street corners, improvised recording setups held together by wires, duct tape, and ambition. While others were weighing product, he was studying words. He read dictionaries and thesauruses to expand his vocabulary, educating himself linguistically in environments not designed for academic growth. Eventually, the music began to generate traction. The 2013 mixtape Project Baby introduced his name to a wider audience. In 2014, No Flockin' circulated heavily online, amplified by Drake's public co-sign. That moment shifted visibility. The kid from Golden Acres was no longer confined to local recognition. Industry eyes turned toward him. In 2015, he signed with Atlantic Records. What followed was measurable success. Painting Pictures debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200. Dying to Live reached number 1. Tracks like Tunnel Vision and the multi-platinum ZZ moved beyond regional appeal and entered mainstream rotation. Kodak Black was no longer just a product of South Florida's underground scene. He was a national figure. His name, his face, his voice became widely recognizable. Visibility, however, carries consequences. The same exposure that elevates also magnifies vulnerability. And while the music climbed, legal trouble accumulated at an almost parallel pace. In 2015 alone, he was arrested in Pompano Beach on charges that included robbery, battery, false imprisonment, and cannabis possession. In 2016, additional arrests followed. Weapons and marijuana charges in Hallandale Beach, armed robbery allegations in Broward County, a first-degree criminal conduct allegation in South Carolina. The list did not slow down. In 2017, probation violations resulted in further incarceration. The pattern became difficult to ignore. As album placements improved, court appearances multiplied. The narrative forming around him was not just about talent. It was about instability colliding with opportunity. This duality matters, because when someone grows up in an environment where survival is instinctive, and then carries that environment into fame, caution becomes habitual. Every interaction is filtered through prior experience. Every public setting is evaluated for risk. By the time he walked into that Pizza Hut in 2026, Kodak Black was not just an artist picking up food. He was a man shaped by poverty, public scrutiny, repeated legal entanglements, and a lifetime of learning that exposure can carry consequences. When a phone appeared in a confined space, it did not register as harmless enthusiasm. It registered as unpredictability. And unpredictability is something he learned early never to underestimate. In 2018, the legal pressure intensified. Charges surfaced for child neglect, firearm theft, and being a felon in possession of a weapon. The pattern that had been forming did not slow down. It escalated. Then, in 2019, came the case many believed would permanently alter the trajectory of his career. Federal weapons charges led to a 46-month prison sentence. For a man in his early 20s whose income relied entirely on presence, visibility, studio sessions, touring, momentum, nearly 4 years was not just time. It was interruption. It was disappearance. It was a forced pause at the height of public attention. That kind of sentence, for someone whose relevance depends on remaining seen, can end more than freedom. It can end momentum. It can end leverage. It can end opportunity. Then, in January 2021, an unexpected development reshaped the narrative. President Donald Trump commuted Kodak Black's sentence after he had served approximately 10 months. A presidential commutation is not common. It is rare. It is the kind of outcome more associated with headlines than lived experience. For a rapper from Golden Acres in Pompano Beach, it felt almost surreal. Freedom returned earlier than anticipated. But release did not mean resolution. The legal system had not disengaged. In January 2022, he was arrested again, this time on trespassing charges. Months later, in July, a traffic stop resulted in oxycodone trafficking and possession allegations. Police reported finding 31 pills and nearly $75,000 in cash. That case lingered. It remained unresolved. It extended without a confirmed trial date well into 2025. Uncertainty became a companion. In December 2023, another arrest followed in Plantation, Florida, this time for cocaine possession. The charge was later dismissed when lab tests determined the substance was legally prescribed oxycodone. By February 2024, a federal judge sentenced him to time served for a probation violation. In April, the remaining tampering charge was dismissed. Over a dozen arrests, multiple periods of incarceration, a presidential commutation, legal matters stretching across years. Through all of it, one constant remained undeniable. Whenever Kodak Black stepped outside, he was observed. By fans who admired him, by critics who questioned him, by law enforcement who monitored him, by media outlets that documented every move, and by individuals whose intentions were not always clear. That constant scrutiny reshapes how a person interprets ordinary situations. So when a cashier in a Pizza Hut raised a phone and began recording without warning, his instinct was not casual. It was conditioned. It was informed by years of consequences following exposure. A camera lens is not neutral in that context. It can signal attention. It can signal risk. It can signal unpredictability. And yet, there was another element present in that restaurant that night, one that many observers overlooked entirely. Standing beside him was Miranda Johnson. She was not just a companion. She was the mother of two of his children. 23 years old, a daughter born around 2022, a son in 2024. Their relationship had moved through turbulence publicly. In August 2025, Johnson filed custody documents in Broward County alleging domestic violence and unpaid child support. The filing included claims of abuse, including accusations of physical assault during pregnancy that allegedly resulted in a dislocated jaw. No criminal charges were filed against Kodak in connection with those allegations. The matter remained within the civil court system. At the same time, Johnson herself faced legal trouble. She was arrested on vandalism charges after damaging Kodak's luxury vehicles. There was also a misdemeanor battery charge connected to an altercation at their daughter's birthday party. The conflict was not one-sided. It was complicated, it was volatile, and it was public. By September 3, 2025, the custody dispute concluded with an agreed parenting plan. Related lawsuits were dismissed. On paper, there was resolution. In practice, reconciliation requires more than documentation. It requires stability. It requires rebuilding trust under scrutiny. Which makes their presence together inside that Pizza Hut in February 2026 more significant than it appeared. It was not simply a late-night food pickup. It was two people with documented history, standing side by side after months of legal friction, operating under public observation. That context matters, because when your private life has already been litigated publicly, the last thing you want is an uncontrolled recording amplifying a routine moment into speculation. For Kodak Black, exposure has repeatedly carried consequence. Legal exposure, media exposure, relationship exposure. Each instance reinforcing the same lesson. Visibility without control can escalate quickly. That understanding does not excuse behavior. It explains reaction. And when you layer his upbringing, his arrests, his incarceration, his commutation, his unresolved cases, and his personal conflicts together, the Pizza Hut incident stops appearing isolated. It becomes part of a larger pattern. A man shaped by instability, operating cautiously in environments others might consider harmless. The fact that Kodak and Miranda were standing side by side inside that Pizza Hut only 5 months after a bitter custody dispute did not go unnoticed by those paying close attention. It suggested movement. It suggested that despite court filings, public accusations, damaged property, and emotional fallout, something had shifted. Two people who had publicly clashed were now sharing space calmly. That matters, especially when children are involved. It indicated an attempt at stability, an effort, at minimum, to operate peacefully for the sake of their daughter and son. In a world where personal conflict often becomes permanent spectacle, choosing coexistence is not insignificant. But the internet does not operate on nuance. It operates on reaction. What followed proved exactly why Kodak Black's instinctive caution toward cameras was not irrational. The video did not circulate quietly. It detonated across platforms. Within 24 hours of appearing on TikTok, the clip migrated to X through accounts such as MyMixtapes and Daily Loud. Captions leaned into the humor. The cashier's plea was framed as comedic relief. Metrics accelerated rapidly. One post from Daily Loud accumulated thousands of likes, hundreds of reposts, and significant reply traffic within days. Instagram Reels amplified it. Facebook pages reposted it. YouTube Shorts condensed it. Each platform reframed the moment slightly differently. Some leaned into comedy. Others highlighted Kodak's reaction. But the common denominator was exposure. A brief exchange inside a fast food restaurant became nationwide content. From one perspective, it was undeniably humorous. Watching an employee lose composure behind a counter because a well-known artist entered for pizza had an absurd quality. Users described it as pure comedy gold. They praised the cashier's excitement. They complimented Kodak for remaining composed. Memes multiplied. Commentary stitched over the clip. The internet treated it as entertainment. But beneath the laughter, a different discussion began forming. Comments surfaced questioning whether Kodak's reaction was paranoia or simply exhaustion. That framing misses the deeper issue. It is not about being overly cautious, it is about understanding context. To grasp that context, attention shifts to South Los Angeles, September 12, 2022. Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles. PNB Rock, born Rakeem Hashim Allen, was 30 years old. He had charting records. He had children. He had a fiancée. He entered a restaurant in the middle of the day for a meal. He did not leave alive. The robbery was orchestrated by Freddie Lee Trone, who sent his 17-year-old son into the establishment armed. Surveillance footage later revealed that Tremont Jones had interacted with PNB Rock shortly before the shooting, reportedly observing jewelry estimated at approximately $500,000. At 1:16 p.m., the masked shooter entered, demanded valuables, and within moments, fired. PNB Rock was struck in the chest and back. He was pronounced dead less than an hour later. In 2024, Trone was convicted of murder, robbery, and conspiracy, receiving 31 years to life. Jones received a 12-year sentence for robbery and conspiracy. Legal consequences followed. Accountability, in the courtroom sense, was established. But the outcome did not restore what was lost. Children grew up without their father. A fiancée lost her partner. The hip-hop community absorbed another preventable tragedy. The memory did not fade. It remained active, referenced whenever another artist was recorded in a vulnerable setting. That is the backdrop against which Kodak Black reacted in 2026. When a phone appears in a restaurant, the reaction is not solely about excitement. It is about what uncontrolled broadcasting can trigger. A live post can reveal location. A tagged video can alert individuals monitoring social feeds. Fame in hip-hop does not exist in isolation from risk. Visibility and vulnerability often move together. The Pizza Hut clip became content. But for those familiar with recent history, it also served as a reminder. Restaurants have become scenes of violence before. Casual outings have turned irreversible within minutes. That memory lingers. And when you factor in Kodak's upbringing, his legal exposure, his constant surveillance, and the very real precedent of artists being harmed after their location was publicized, his hesitation begins to look less like paranoia and more like pattern recognition. The internet consumed the moment for entertainment. But for someone living inside that visibility, the stakes are different. Cameras are not neutral. They can amplify opportunity. They can also amplify threat. That duality is what continues to shadow hip-hop. This is the context that sat behind every comment under that Pizza Hut clip. Whether people admitted it directly or not, they understood it. When Kodak Black saw that phone come up, he was not processing excitement. He was calculating exposure. He was thinking about what happens when a location becomes public in real time. He was thinking about how many headlines he had read where a rapper was simply eating, shopping, or standing outside when everything shifted because someone decided content mattered more than caution. In that split second, the cashier was not just a fan. The phone was not just a phone. It represented unpredictability. And this was not unfamiliar territory for him. In 2022, shortly after the murder of PNB Rock, Kodak publicly confronted a fan on Instagram Live who was filming near his car. His words were direct. "You don't see that stuff that just happened to PNB Rock? So why are you recording me?" He questioned the fan's intentions. He rejected the idea that filming was harmless. The tone made one thing clear. Unsolicited recording was not acceptable. Not in a climate where visibility could escalate into vulnerability within minutes. The message was consistent in other moments as well. At the 2025 Kentucky Derby, when a woman aggressively insisted on a photo, he chose silence and distance. He walked away rather than engage. At concerts, after being struck with water bottles, he responded publicly, urging crowds to identify those responsible. He has confronted individuals over perceived disrespect. He has debated critics openly. He has exposed provocations rather than ignore them. Across incidents, one pattern remains visible. Kodak Black is protective of his space, but the Pizza Hut moment also revealed something equally important. He returned. He could have exited permanently. He could have treated the situation as closed and removed himself. Instead, he heard sincerity in the cashier's voice. He recognized regret. He recalibrated. He chose to finish the transaction. He acknowledged the staff. He left without escalation. That decision complicates the narrative. A man ruled by paranoia does not re-engage. A man operating from experience does. He assessed, he adjusted, he moved forward. 2 days later, he addressed criticism directly. Online voices questioned why he was at a Pizza Hut with Miranda Johnson. The speculation attempted to reduce the moment to optics. Kodak responded without filtering himself. He spoke about being a father. He spoke about spending Valentine's Day getting gifts for his children. He explained that he was simply out with the mother of his kids doing something ordinary. He dismissed the negativity. He made it clear that he was prioritizing family over commentary. The tone was raw, but it was focused. He did not frame himself as a victim. He framed himself as a father making routine decisions. That distinction matters. And this is where the broader conversation begins to surface. The Pizza Hut incident was not really about pizza. It was not about a cashier's excitement. It was not even entirely about Kodak Black. It exposed a larger tension inside hip-hop culture in 2026. Fame does not exist in a vacuum. It exists under surveillance. Artists cannot enter everyday spaces without becoming content. A meal becomes a clip. A location becomes a tag. A brief exchange becomes debate. For some artists, that exposure is manageable. For others, particularly those with documented histories of conflict or legal scrutiny, it carries weight. Public presence becomes a calculated risk. The deeper issue is not enthusiasm from fans. It is the absence of boundaries in a digital era where recording is reflexive. When everything is content, discretion disappears. And in a genre that has repeatedly experienced violence tied to visibility, that disappearance has consequences. Kodak Black's reaction was shaped by experience. His return was shaped by judgment. Both can exist simultaneously. Caution and composure are not opposites. They are learned behaviors. The Pizza Hut video traveled fast. It generated laughs. It generated debate. But underneath it was a reminder. In hip-hop, everyday outings can become flashpoints not because of drama, but because of exposure. Fame amplifies everything, including risk. It was about stopping what she described as predatory behavior, disguised as fandom. That phrase carries weight. Because admiration is not the same as access. And access is not the same as entitlement. In recent years, artists have been forced to articulate boundaries that once seemed obvious. The line separating appreciation from intrusion has thinned to a degree that feels almost invisible. Fat Joe once referred to rappers as an endangered species. It was not delivered as a joke. It was not exaggerated for effect. It was stated plainly. And the reason nobody laughed is because the pattern is documented. Too many names. Too many funerals. Too many headlines repeating the same structure with different faces. Social media has erased the distance that once separated celebrity from observer. A phone screen creates proximity. Parasocial relationships develop. Fans feel connected. They feel familiar. They feel as if the artist belongs to them in some small way. In most cases, that connection remains harmless. Sometimes it is even positive. But occasionally it crosses a threshold that cannot be reversed. PNB Rock's family understands that reality. Pop Smoke's family understands it. Drakeo the ruler's family understands it. Each case reinforced the same lesson. Visibility invites opportunity, but it also invites threat. And Kodak Black, who has survived gunfire, survived incarceration, survived repeated legal scrutiny that followed him year after year, understands the equation as well as anyone in hip-hop today. That is why the Pizza Hut moment cannot be reduced to comedy alone. When he saw the phone, he was not operating in abstraction. He was calculating precedent. He was recalling names. He was measuring risk against routine. That calculation happens quickly for someone who has lived through instability. It is not dramatic. It is instinctive. So when you encounter artists in public, the decision to record is not neutral. Posting a location in real time is not insignificant. It transforms private presence into public signal. In an industry that has already absorbed too many losses, that signal carries weight. For Kodak Black, walking into a Pizza Hut on a quiet February night was supposed to be simple. It was supposed to be ordinary. But ordinary spaces have not always remained ordinary for artists in this genre. That question, whether the moment was safe, was not philosophical for him. It was practical. It was immediate. It was grounded in lived experience. The difference between finishing a meal and becoming another headline can sometimes hinge on something as small as a phone being raised at the wrong time. The video went viral. The jokes circulated. The debates followed. But underneath it was a reminder about boundaries, about discretion, about the cost of visibility in a culture that consumes access relentlessly. Streetwears has documented enough patterns to recognize one when it appears. The Pizza Hut incident was not an overreaction. It was a reflection of the climate hip-hop operates within today. The footage ended without violence. That matters. It ended with a handshake. That matters too. But the instinct behind the reaction deserves the same attention as the humor surrounding it, because the list of names that did not get to walk away is already long.